Really appreciated what you've done there. And it really explained, I think, the first part. We always look at this stuff and we examine it in quite a lot of detail. And then we dive into our that's the part that we go missing for. So this has really been an invitation to open up our minds a little bit differently. And I've heard the debate about combining part 2 and part 3 together and everything. So South Africa, it's been a little bit of a different journey. To get a national standard in, we had to go through the committee. If you looked at Paul's slide at the top right-hand side, there was a key note there about the technical committee that was involved and the standards committee, TC and the SC. Yeah. So in South Africa, the people pushing to get ISO 19650 approved was actually the facilities management industry. So we sort of had a bit of an agitation, and then we tried to get involved, and finally we found out that essentially going through the right channels wasn't going to get us anywhere. So we approached the wrong channels. So we simply used the FM standard, and we went outside the requirements of the ISO guys. So we used a different technical committee to get our standards through. People on the committee knew how important it was to have information on assets that are already built. So the target was really a part 3, but we had to get parts 1 and 2 there. We got them adopted by the industry or adopted by the Bureau of Standards, had a look at them, they accepted it, they've gone through. So we've done part 1 and part 2, which have been now published as national standards. And part 3 has been all the way, it's been reviewed. There's been a period for contributions by the public. All of that is closed, and we actually were expecting it to be published the tail end of last year. So that's where we are with getting this officially done. The BIM community, which is the other part which you guys are all now hosted by, we're looking at the whole issue of promoting BIM, seeing what we're going to do, how we're going to go about it, and then we started the BIM journey before ISO 19650. So it was still 1192. British standards were looked at, but we then started looking. So we approached it from through the facilities management. There were in the initial committee's involvement. There was a FM side of it, and we got going. So I've been responsible for pushing the boundaries on the 19650, and two codices ago, we found a useful partner, CIDB. Okay, so we realized we didn't, as enthusiastic as we are and as capable as we are of doing things that we shouldn't be doing properly, okay, we actually needed a little bit more muscle and a little bit more ability. And in the same, there was a parallel journey being run by the CIDB, and we got together with them and we decided we needed to involve them in what we were busy with, and they decided that we were most probably a useful party, useful idiot hanging around, looking after us that they could use. So that's really where we are now with the CIDB. CIDB, Ishmael, going to need him on part of the talking, because that's really where we are looking at the moment, is trying to get to this next level as an industry in South Africa. One thing we need to understand as the industry, we have got a problem in the Bureau of Standards as far as the technical ability or the technical standards and knowledge that exists there at the moment. The people have left, they're no longer involved. We are dealing with people, so we need a slightly different approach for South Africa to get there. And we need to reinvent from so there's going to have to be involvement from the disciplines in getting into there. And we need, as disciplines, we then need to involve our registered people and involved in like Procasa, the industries, the contracts we run, all of those things need to become part of what I'm talking about in the national annex. So Ishmael, do you want to give us a little update on where you guys are?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Ishmael. I'm from the CIDB. I'm joined by my colleagues. very much involved in the road and the pathway to implementing BIM in South Africa. I'm using BIM, so you have to excuse me, but that is where we are now. So it's in Tebo, Zama, and Pumalele. I'm from a unit within the CIDB that is standards and policy development, so it is right up my sleeve here. And I'm glad that I'm here. I've also, it's quite mind sort of blowing in terms of how you approach in terms of systems. I also like that. And then my colleagues, they are from the research department as well. So we're tackling from both sides. We are also very much aligned to what you have or still doing in the UK. We're a bit biased towards that. So this is very good information to the CIDB for us where we are now. Just a little background, Rud, thank you for that intro. You have mentioned about the CIDB. Now you're probably wondering what is the CIDB's role in this? The owners, as Rud has said, they are the South African Bureau of Standards. That's your equivalent to the British Standard Institution. But the CIDB, because they develop, so they the custodians of that, but it remains there. It's like your ISO 9001 for industry to utilize it. The purpose and the role of the CIDB is we are a regulator, report to the Department of Public Works, the Minister of Public Works. And one of the mandates is to introduce and implement standards, best practice guidelines. And that is for procurement, basically how we're going to implement BIM in South Africa. In terms of the procurement regime, like Radhe said, this is all nice. It's nice to talk about it, but you need some firm instrument to introduce it. And you have done it through a mandate. The CIDB or government, we represent government to introduce and use it also as a mandate because we do have it in our act to apply this. And through industry like yourselves, we will we will ask you to participate in a number of engagements. And for that, what we are going to establish from today onwards, we request through yourselves that we're going to establish a focus group. And we're going to have a number of focus groups. In this particular one, Ntebo and the team, they've developed a policy for BIM implementation based on the UK model for the next 5 to 10 years. We used similar, the same approach. We used your promotion, change management approach. We've also done, for example, the structure in terms of the policies, procedures, standards, guidelines. The other one is the education. We are also approaching and targeting the institutions, the whole training regime. And then we are also looking at the security in terms of how we're going to have the security protocol in South Africa. And then we're looking at the monitoring and evaluation. And then we're looking at the same system approach as in how do we improve it, how do we sort of get to align with international best practice. Where we are now is in terms of the annex. So let me move into the reason why I talk about the strategy is one of that is where I'm sitting in. That is the best practice guidelines, annexes, and standards. And what we are doing now is that since SABs have published the 19650 part 2, that is what we've been waiting for. It has been published now, and now we can proceed with the national annexer. And as we know, the national annexer is country specific. And that is where we need you as industry experts that are applying sort of the BIM collaboration, information modeling. And so we, as a CIDB, we're a regulator. How we do things in the past, and we are also learning, is we develop a concept document. And then we then form the focus group that consists of you and perhaps others that are not present today. And then we then discuss, enhance, and then develop this document. But it's an iterative process similar to yours. And we can learn from you, and that is what we want to do, is how did you approach it? For example, where we are sitting currently, we're sitting on the question, do we as a CIDB, and we are policymakers, we're not the technical experts. we develop the concept document as the annexer for South Africa via the appointment of a service provider, and then bring it to the focus group, the committee, for inputs, and then you enhance it, and through the iterative process, that is how we develop the South African National Annexure. And that is what we want to learn from you as well, from the UK. How did you go about this? Because ultimately, although the CIDB is part of our mandate to develop standards and guidelines, at the completion of the South African National Annex, it will be an appendix. It will append to 19650 Part 2. And that will then form the National Annex for South Africa. Now, beyond that, and we follow, using the cue from the UK, the implementation guidelines to implement all of those 8 steps, because we are, most of you, all of you here, you're converted. And that's a small percentage where we are currently in South Africa. My colleagues, they do these surveys to gauge where the maturity of BIM adoption in South Africa, and it is quite low, particularly amongst our client base. And that is probably where the most important one are. If we're looking at the portfolio percentage of infrastructure owned by government, it's huge. So that is where we have to start working from in terms of your client, the owner, plus the professions, and then the contractors. So with this approach, we are looking at tackling all spheres of the stakeholders. But our challenge is the world is already way ahead of us, and we are playing catch up. But we also have an advantage. We can learn from them, and that is exactly what we intend to do. We will leapfrog. We will learn. For example, they have learned as they went along, and we will try to avoid those sort of learning, not mistakes, but it's lessons. So that is where we are, but it puts a big onus on us as industry stakeholders to work together, and we need you. Like I said, we policymakers. You ask us about policies, we will do that. We are not the technical experts, and we will lean on you, on your expertise when we develop these, particularly where we're starting now. We're starting with the first one is the South African National Annex. But with that, when we do form the focus groups, we will then lean on you in terms of even the development, the identification of the separate focus groups. And we've looked at the UK in terms of, it's not just the national annex. There are, like Paul has said, it has its tentacles everywhere. So we probably have to look at it holistically and in an integrated manner when we develop the other standards as well. A little bit behind in terms of UK. We like Larat said, probably in the sort of year we'll get part 3 of 19650, which will be good news. And then we decide as an industry, do we now also develop the annexer for part 3, which I believe it's a huge demand for that. If you're looking at our maintenance, our conditions of our infrastructure and assets in South Africa. But saying that, we are at the stage now where we need your input through yourselves, through the BIM community. We will then solicit names, contact details for those experts and technical persons to sit on these different committees and focus groups. And I would just like to thank the BIM community for the opportunity to work with them. Without you, we can't do that. We are policymakers. We're not technical experts in these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishmael. Really appreciate you coming in. Okay, so you thought you had a free lunch. You don't have a free lunch. The most critical thing for us is we can't just simply do things the way everybody else did it and take something and step it on it. We have got a lot of processes that are very different in South Africa, contracts that we use and formulate, and we need to get all of those in. So you will be approached by the community. We are looking to involve you guys in the various subcommittees. Now that we have part 2 approved as part of a SANS, we actually have something to build on, and that's really where we want to move forward. Now I'm going to hand over to Paul, who's going to take us through the next phase,